everything changes when we get together.
That's the voice of Cortney McDermott. Hi there, my name is Matthew Blades, and welcome to a special 9-episode series of bite-sized content called A Microdose for the things that keep you up at night. Here's the way I look at life. Each one of us is just a sequence of words away from having everything make sense, or at least gaining more clarity. So if you're ready to make a micro investment in you and walk through topics like blowing up what you built, tuning out the noise, becoming that transitional character, improving your health, your relationships, advancing in your career, then you found the right place. Welcome to a very special Learn from People Who Lived It. Welcome to episode 2, tuning out the noise. So when you think about tuning out the noise, what does that mean?
I wrote so much about this in the first and the second book because we're so distracted. We're hyper distracted. Like if you're listening to this, where's your phone right now? How many times have you checked it in the last 10 minutes? When you're just hanging out with someone, are you able to really hear everything they're saying? Or has your mind kind of skipped into something else? Are you able to not say? Are you able to not talk? Are you able to just sit there with someone, a friend, a loved one? Are you able to do that? Or is your mind or your hand going just for something else? And the more you start training yourself to be with what's going on, just be with what's going on, the more space will open up for you to see how huge you are.
What I think about when I think about tuning out the noise is the simple concept that, like, when you decide to make a change in your life, there'll be a lot of opinions about who and what you should do. And we know this to be true because I've interviewed more than 300 people on the podcast, and I know there's a few like through lines that you see all the time. And one of the most common ones is, well, I decided to make a change, but I didn't get the support from the people around me. Why? Because when you change, other people have to sort of come along for that ride, or they have to get off the bus. And so for me, when I think about tuning out the noise, I think, okay, you got to be so good with your decision to get back to episode 1, blowing up what you built. You got to be so confident that that was the right decision for you, that it doesn't matter what other people say. And, you know, horses run races, and sometimes when the horse is a little crazy, what do? They put the blinders on them so they can't see to the left or the right. And when I think about tuning out the noise, that's what it means to me. It's like, don't worry about what mom says. Don't worry about what your spouse says. Don't worry about what your kids say. Don't worry about what the outside world say. Don't worry about what the comments on your Instagram feed say. Run your race. If you know where you're headed next, which is something we're going to talk about, a little bit later on in this series, it's so much easier to just run there and not worry about it. But it's hard to not listen to the noise because sometimes it comes from voices that we really love and we really trust and we want their approval. Jam on that for a minute.
Well, first of all, thanks for putting the blinders back on me, because when we were talking about this, I know, and even in the lead-in for this, I know we were talking specifically about how other people are going to perceive your choices. But I do want to go back for a second to like the noise. The noise is it's being distracted. Like it doesn't matter the form the distraction comes in. It's being distracted from what you know is true. And so for me, one of the big things is like, I remember when I was leaving corporate and I had this great job and everyone was like, oh my God, you're crazy. And I was saying, well, I'm going to take a 2-month sabbatical and go with my daughter to the States, which I did do. And then I'm going to try to start my own businesses. And everyone thought I was nuts, like totally off my rocker. I did not have total confidence that I could do it. I did not have blinders on. I did not have single pointed focus. What I did know was like the truth in me was yelling, like you said in the first episode, something about this. The truth in me was yelling louder than the compelling reasons why I shouldn't. And one of the things that really helped me, since I didn't have a lot of people around me who thought that I could do that. I did have some. I've always had some people in my court, thank gosh. But what I learned was you can also find resources and things that help you stay on those tracks. You don't need to necessarily have someone in your court. I remember writing a piece for the Huffington Post years and years ago saying how, Oprah was my dear friend and she could be yours too, right? And it was really about like you can tap into anyone, anywhere. Luckily, in the age that we're in, right, you could listen to something like this and all of a sudden it gives you that creative juice to keep going, to stay on track when you're doubting yourself, because you will doubt yourself, and unless you have some probably psychoses, you're going to doubt yourself because everything around you is telling you maybe that it's not possible.
I want to ask you about something that's coming to my mind right now, which is part of tuning out the noise is bringing in other sounds that feel and sound better to you. And so, again, to go back to, I love the distraction because you're right. It's a huge piece of it. It's easy to get distracted and then lose focus and then get into a victim mode. You're like, see, I knew this would happen or something like that. But there's also something about, man, if you've got people in your corner and they're just not using language with you that's helping you get to where you want to go, they have to exit the chapter for a couple of, like, they got to get out of that book for a couple of chapters. And you can bring them back if you want. But talk to me about the importance of, yes, we have to tune out the noise, but part of that, to me at least, feels like bringing in sounds that feel better.
Yeah. Yeah, in my first book, I actually drew a diagram around this, in terms of your circles, what's immediately around you, right? Einstein said that the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. And in a way, I always thought of that as externally, right? The way your environment is impacting you. But you can also reverse that that's another conversation we'll have in a later episode, but you can reverse that in terms of you impacting your environment, your inner environment impacting that field in a totally different way. But until you kind of get a hang of that, your external environment will have a massive, massive imprint on how you operate. So the more you can get people around you. And again, you don't have to know those people. And I think that's the brilliant thing about what's going on here even. You don't have to know. I mean, for instance, doing work with one of us, that's really, that there's huge waiting lists for stuff like that, right? It's like you don't have to know to get something right now that could be that thing that just says, oh, that with that one piece, I'm feeling like I have more strength, because everything around you should fortify you. And you should seek to fortify everything around you. Everyone that comes into contact with you should be richer as a result of being in your field, and vice versa. So just notice, like, do I feel drained, or do I feel my light is shining brighter? If I don't feel when I'm with someone that my light is shining brighter, I might not be able to get out of that situation that second right then and there, especially if it's, my mother-in-law or whatever. But if I can then go and as much as possible start to take my time and my energy and invest it with people in situations, again, just even listening to a podcast, I will start to fortify my own field so that I can be the one who changes the particle. Yeah.
Okay. As we wind down this bit about tuning out the noise, do you think that it's possible to make a big shift in your life and pay attention to the noise?
Good question. Ooh. I think you're going to notice things, but if you start noticing things in a way that you let them wash through you rather than holding on to them, I think it's not so much, there's going to be noise anyway, right? You're exposed to trillions, maybe even more pieces of data per second, right? And all this is going on, and you have a very minimal awareness of what's actually happening. So it's sort of, what are you attaching yourself to? What are you kind of clinging to? What are you trying to avoid? Those are the pieces to really notice and to say, what if I just let that wash through and I go back to putting my focus on what I want? Yeah, which is where we're going next, I think.
Yeah, right. This idea of being the new character, what I call the transitional character. So yeah, we are going to go there, but I like to wrap up with this thought of a lot of times we hear feedback in our lives and we make so much meaning out of it. And one of the things that I've had to really work on over the last few years in my life is just taking that feedback as information and not giving it any kind of a weight, but just, so that's the motivation behind the question of like, can you still pay attention to the noise and make a big shift? I think you can. as long as you just take it in as information and you don't give a lot of value to it and a lot of weight, and it doesn't ultimately influence what you do next, you still have to be your own guiding light in this process. Okay. So when we get back, we're going to jump into my favorite thing in the whole world to talk about, which is the idea of the transitional character. You write in your book a lot about being a new character and just kind of what that means. Give me a little bit of a tease on what we can expect next.
Well, the way I think about it is you have so many potentials available to you, and potentially those are infinite, right? So it's sort of, where do I want to go next? Who is she, or who is he, or who is they? You know, how do they show up in the world? How does he show up? And really starting to play with that the whole time, recognizing something much deeper that I know we've talked about multiple times in our episodes and we'll continue to talk about here, which is you're not the character. So if you know you're not that, it's a little bit like, oh, hey, I'm auditioning for Macbeth because that's the play I want to be in and I want to play Macbeth. Okay, great, cool, go for it. Like, let's see what happens. And that just becomes then this fun game that you play with life.
Okay. It's all about making a micro investment in you. And that's what this whole series is about. So stick with us. When we come back next time, we're going to be talking about just that.